My friends, pay attention to this. While you're watching this video, 41 oil tankers are sitting idle off the coast of Iran. Right now, they're holding about 69 million barrels of oil, which is worth more than $6 billion that the regime simply can't touch. Tehran's financial oxygen has been cut off. We are already on the 21st day of a naval blockade that's no longer a test or a diplomatic exercise. It's an economic death sentence that's been going on for 3 weeks and is grinding down the gears of a system that thought it could bend the will of the world. But what Admiral Brad Cooper put before President Trump isn't about money. It's about a formal request to use for the first time in history the dark in combat. Yes, my friends, we're talking about a ballistic missile that covers the distance between Sao Paulo and Rio Grande do Sul in just 10 minutes. Iran built bunkers in Yas, believing they were impenetrable, and the United States just proved that they're only targets with a delayed arrival. Now look at the size of the hole. While the regime talks tough and promises strong responses, the reality behind the scenes is collapse. The formal request to deploy the Dark Eagle in the Middle East is not a routine military move. It's a sign that the doomsday clock has moved its hand. And the mechanics of it, which is visceral, the coordinated pressure between the total maritime blockade and the threat of a hypersonic attack has created deep cracks in the Iranian leadership. The Revolutionary Guard and the politicians are now fighting among themselves to decide who will have the misfortune of signing the surrender before the first strike happens. And even with all this advantage, no military power fully controls the chaos of a real war. And to understand why the Ayatollahs are losing sleep and why in Beijing and Moscow the mood is one of high alert, you need to know the anatomy of the machine that will dominate this conflict. The Dark Eagle. It is officially designated as the Army's long-range hypersonic weapon, but you can call it the invisible sniper of faith. Look at the level of engineering we're dealing with here. The Dark Eagle is not an ordinary missile that follows a predictable parabola in the sky. It uses an architecture called boost glide, which means boost and glide. In the first phase, a solid fuel booster launches the system into the upper atmosphere, accelerating the whole assembly to speeds that defy logic. Then this booster separates and releases the glider vehicle, the common, and the object has a mass of approximately 1 ton. It continues flying within the atmosphere without propulsion, actively maneuvering like a surfer on a plasma wave. But my friends, I'll translate this to our reality. We're talking about a sustained speed of Mach 5, but it can reach peaks of Mach 15. That means flying at over 18,000 kilometers per hour at certain times. In practice, this means that when the Iranian radar operator realizes something has entered their airspace, the impact had already happened 3 seconds earlier. It's like getting punched before your brain even realizes the fight has started. The Dark Eagle has an official range that exceeds 2,700 kilometers and can reach up to 3,000 kilometers. It can be launched from a completely safe area and hit entire command centers with a precision that Beirut understands. But this is where things get even worse and Washington's irony appears. Unlike traditional missiles, the Dark Eagle doesn't rely on a large explosive payload to cause destruction. Its warhead has less than 14 kilos of explosives. You heard that right? 14 kilos. But don't be fooled. The secret is kinetic energy. A 1-ton object traveling at 18,000 kilometers per hour can generate an enormous impact energy, equivalent to a ton of TNT concentrated in a tiny area. It's the end of the era of safe bunkers. Iran spent decades and billions of dollars digging tunnels in Yazd and Isfahan, believing that solid rock would protect them. The problem is that the Dark Eagle doesn't knock on the door. It goes through the roof, the floor, and the structure of those who thought depth was synonymous with safety. It goes into canyons and valleys where conventional missiles would hit the wall. It's as if the United States brought a hypersonic sniper rifle to a knife fight. Each battery has 4 mobile launchers, totaling 8 missiles ready for checkmate. And just this battery can be worth $2 billion, and that's a direct signal to China and Russia. The United States not only has the technology, they're ready to use it against time-critical targets. But war isn't exact math. And even with this technological dominance, the introduction of a weapon that reduces decision time to seconds makes the playing field extremely unstable. Iran is cornered, but a cornered enemy becomes even more unpredictable, and this is where things can change. Let's look at the economic playing field. The naval blockade is not just a barrier of ships, it's a financial tourniquet. 41 oil tankers are stopped. 69 million barrels. It's the regime's oxygen, and the oxygen is gone. Iran is trying to keep up appearances, saying the blockade has failed, but the data tell a different story. The Revolutionary Guard insists on the blockade like that guy who jumps from the 20th floor and as he passes the 10th says, well, so far so good. They're out of money, out of spare parts, and now with a hypersonic sniper aimed at their jugular, but they swear they're winning. Their paper aircraft carriers watch the American Super Hornets from afar, knowing that any wrong move will be their last. The Dark Eagle is the guarantee that if Iran tries to break the blockade by force, its teeth, the ballistic missile launchers, will be ripped out before they even get a chance to bite. Constant surveillance and hypersonic interception capability take away any chance Iran has of resupplying or escaping. They are trapped in a cage of steel and technology, and the key is in Washington's hands. But make no mistake, hardline and only responds to extreme pressure. They are weakened, but like someone trying to hold their breath until they pass out, they might try one last desperate move before the final blackout. Now let's take a visual tour of the targets. Look at Yas. The regime describes the site as a radiation processing facility, but satellite images show fortified bunkers in narrow canyons. They believe in geography. They think hiding missiles under mountains of solid rock is enough. But look at the detail they ignore. The United States believes in kinematics. The Dark Eagle is not an ordinary missile. We've already said it goes into canyons where an ordinary missile can't. The regime believes in the protection the terrain provides, but Washington masters the physics of impact. The constant ISR from MQ-9 and RQ-4 drones has mapped every ventilation duct in those bunkers. The Yas labyrinth has become a trap. And the regime is starting to realize that the depth of their mountains is now the size of their tomb. While the Marines board the Blue Star 3 ship at sea, the bombers in the sky mark the coordinates of every secret bunker. Right, guys? Now pay attention. Because this is the point the media refuses to touch. Because after all, why are the United States and Israel fighting this war? Isn't it just for oil? Isn't it just for trade routes? It's a fight against a regime whose foundation is to destroy the world as we know it and to impose radical Islamic laws in place of any freedom. The principle of this regime's success requires destroying Israel from the face of the earth so that there can be a supposed final redemption. They don't hide this, they write it on their missiles. And this is where the moral clarity that President Trump revealed to the world comes in, and I fully agree with it. Exactly, crazy people cannot have nuclear weapons or ballistic missile programs. A regime that preaches the apocalypse cannot have an army equipped with mass destruction technology. And there's one more thing. Allowing a radical regime to obtain nuclear weapons is guaranteeing that the world will enter a spiral of chaos and annihilation with no way back. That's why the Dark Eagle is not just a weapon, it's an instrument for the preservation of civilization. It's what will determine whether this world is free or not. Sorry, it's a global danger. But for a few days, the situation seemed frozen. Trump's diplomacy was using the hypersonic stick just as a selling point. It seemed like time was on Iran's side. But don't be fooled, up to this point the game is under control. But there is a real risk. Iran doesn't need to win head-on. It needs to mess up the game with asymmetric responses, militias, and sabotage. To put it simply, all Iran needs to do is launch a massive attack with the Shiite militias in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and Hezbollah in Lebanon. A massive strike against the United States allies in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain. Chaos would be unleashed. We've seen this in the last few days of the war. Besides, no system in the world is perfect when you're facing a saturation attack involving hundreds of missiles at once. One miscalculation here and it stops being a controlled conflict and turns into a regional inferno. And that's exactly why Trump's game is more dangerous than it seems, because he's pushing to the limit until the Dark Eagle comes into play. Complete suffocation. The Joint Force has created an absolute denial bubble. It's the concept of a land-based aircraft carrier. The Dark Eagle opens the door, the F-35 clears the corridor, and the F-15A Strike Eagle finishes the demolition job. The elite of the Revolutionary Guard realized that their deterrence became obsolete in a single afternoon. Sensor fusion creates a new reality. The regime can't move a cent without permission. Will the regime survive the first impact, or will internal implosion come first? Comment here. My friends, history is unfolding before our eyes and the time for doubt is over. What I brought here today is proof that physics and strategy always win over brute force and fanaticism. But the system doesn't want you to see these connections. They want you to stay stuck on the surface of pre-digested news. That's why I invite you to take the next step. For those who seek to understand these signs with the depth that the mainstream tries to hide, I'll be waiting for you in our intelligence bunker. There, our platform is exclusive and completely free from censorship. We analyze these geopolitical movements with data that the system is terrified of you knowing. Today, we already have more than 3,000 subscribers, keeping this information battlefront alive and independent. The QR code is available. It's right here on your screen. The link is right here in the description and in the first pinned comment. So I'll see you there. And for those who want to stay informed while also strengthening their family's mind and spirit, check out our channel for movies and TV series. There we carefully curate fantastic content for you to enjoy with your loved ones. Everything is free from woke culture, no whining, and focused on entertaining and understanding the world through art. Link in the description, link in the pinned comment, and here on the card. Go check out our channel. Now subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like. Blend your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video.